Today, we are excited to feature Lila Mills, Editor-in-Chief for Signal Cleveland, the Ohio Local News Initiative's Cleveland newsroom, a role she stepped into last year in May of 2022. With her background in both reporting and community building work, Lila brings together the many facets of her career into this role. After receiving her master's degree in journalism from Columbia University, she started her career in TV and then worked as a police reporter at the Plain Dealer, as well as student newspaper advisor at Tri-C. Lila later became editor of the Greater University Circle Neighborhood Voice, a community newspaper run by Neighborhood Connections. She stayed with the organization for more than a decade, moving to communications manager and associate director. Through these roles, she also worked with Cleveland Documenters, which later folded into Signal Cleveland. Lila joined the organization at their launch with the goal of making Cleveland's news as accessible as possible to the community. She is born and raised in Cleveland with a passion for giving back to the community. She is also a graduate of the Cleveland Bridge Builders class of 2015. Please welcome Lila.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad to be here. I'm going to run us through a few slides to kind of give folks an overview of what we've been doing here with Signal, and then we'll open it up for questions. So Signal Cleveland, we launched about 8 months ago in November. I am the editor-in-chief. We are the first newsroom in the Signal Ohio network of local newsrooms. And this is a network of local newsrooms launching across the state. We are on our way to our second newsroom, launching soon in Akron. That's getting off the ground now. And the vision is to blanket the state with local nonprofit newsrooms in urban and rural areas. And the key to what we're doing is really, it's part of this movement of local nonprofit news that's growing across the country. And it's really growing in response to the market failure of the traditional news model. So we've all heard the stories of the traditional model dying because of a shift in advertising. And as revenue has constricted over the years, we've seen the loss of reporters and loss of coverage in many communities, where once we had hundreds of reporters covering and working in Cleveland and Cleveland neighborhoods, we now have only a handful at all media organizations combined. Yet and still, information remains power, and people need reliable information to take action in any number of ways in their daily lives. So just to give you a sense of how the industry has constricted over the years, communities have lost, 2,100 plus communities have lost a local newspaper. 60% of the jobs in journalism have disappeared. And more than 1,000 newspapers are called kind of ghost papers, meaning they're really devoid of original local content. We know research is showing us that as that local news disappears, division and fear and isolation grows, and that civic engagement also decreases. But there's this movement of nonprofit newsrooms across the country, of which Signal is part. And there are nonprofit newsrooms in California, in places like Oaklandside, in Memphis with MLK 50, all these local newsrooms that are really popping up that are saying, we're gonna change this model, and we're going to really make this a nonprofit public service-based model for news and information. In Cleveland, we started the work of the Signal Ohio network by first really talking with Greater Clevelanders about how they got news and information in the first place. And they told us kind of some key things that are really the hallmark of what we are striving to do here. People said, we don't want to just consume news. We want information exchange. We want reporters really bringing our questions to the powers that be, not determining what the questions are kind of in a vacuum inside a newsroom. People really want to be able to do something with the information they have. So people also said, we want information early enough on in the life cycle of a story to be able to take action on it if we want to. So we want information that we can do something with. People wanted more accessible information. So there was a lot of conversation about low literacy rates in the city and in the county, and this idea that, news and information can't just be shared like words on a screen. And there was a lot of conversation about perspective and diversity of perspective. And in one of the focus groups, we actually had a resident from the East Side who said, when people come to my neighborhood, they always quote this one person. And I haven't been a reporter in almost 20 years, but 20 years ago, I used to quote that one person. And so it really speaks to how when reporter after reporter after reporter, we're creating a narrative about a neighborhood that becomes kind of one note or kind of becomes the same. It kind of becomes this rote narrative that we're presenting. So this idea of diversity of perspective is also really crucial. So if we showed the Signal logo, it's kind of a crossroads logo. And at the heart of it is this yellow. And that crossroads references Cleveland. That was a symbol that was said to be used on the quilts that marked the way towards Cleveland on the Underground Railroad. So it's a reference to Cleveland, but at its center is this yellow square. And that's a reference to the Cleveland Documenters community, because the way that we really get at the diversity of perspective and centering community in the work we do is through the work of Cleveland Documenters. And Cleveland Documenters there are 650 folks across the county who have signed up to be documenters. Anybody can sign up and go through a 1-hour training and then be paid and trained to document local meetings and to do survey assignments that involve interviewing their friends and neighbors on a topic. That community and that core of equipping people to do this work is really at the heart of our work. And, as we're losing and we're talking about the industry constricting, we believe that to get back to the level of kind of reporting and really accountability that folks are interested in, we need to spread those practices of journalism. So we need to say, you don't have to be a working journalist working in a newsroom in order to develop some of these skills. We can train you to develop those skills, and then you can begin to use those skills in different ways. We talk about Cleveland Documenters being a community for curious people and being a community that asks questions. So we really want to develop that skill of curiosity, that skill of being able to say, hey, wait, why does that work that way? Because the truth is that that's valuable for folks as residents, but it's also valuable for officials to hear those questions as well. And what we found is, as we've reported out those questions that documenters have had, is often officials will say to us, oh, I didn't know it worked that way. I never realized, I never really asked why it worked that way. And if we can show why it works that way, how it might work better for folks, that's valuable for all of us. So that's kind of at the heart of what we're getting at, in which we're essentially flipping a traditional news model, where a traditional model is really centered on a small core group of editors determining what the news of the day is. In our model, we want to work more and more towards taking our direction from community members and the questions that they're asking. I have in these slides an example of 3 documenters and what they've done with that training. None of them are working as full-time reporters, although we do have some reporters in the Signal newsroom who started as documenters. But I think it kind of highlights this idea that training and spreading the practice of journalism broadly to all residents, to be able to use it in their lives as they see fit, is what we think is going to lead us to a more vibrant and civically engaged community. So we've got folks who have used it to write news articles. We've had folks who have used it to launch their own projects. We had somebody who launched an environmental project based out of some of the things that she started, skills she started to build as a documenter. And we've had folks who have, in the midst of their documenting, given space and voice for other residents to kind of make a public comment on a topic. All of those things are not traditional paths for journalism, but they're valuable civic skills for folks to learn. So I talked a little bit about flipping that journalism model, and that's kind of the heart of what we're working on here at Signal. And so I do have a slide in here that talks a little bit about how we do that. So we really start with a question that either surfaces from a community gathering that we host monthly, or that surfaces from a documenter as they're going about their work documenting a public meeting. We hone that question with the help of group discussions. We do a group full team meeting here with our reporters and editors here. We do a monthly meeting with documenters. We hone those questions, and then for special circumstances, we will turn those questions into a survey, and we will actually send documenters out into the community to interview their friends and neighbors on a topic. What that does is that ends up getting us more voices on a topic than one reporter could ever hope to get. So we recently did a series on casino revenue dollars that are supposed to make their way into Cleveland neighborhoods to support different community work. And we ended up having documenters go out and interview 30 Cleveland residents. That was across 13 wards, about what they knew about the dollars, what they wanted to know about the dollars. That gives us that diverse perspective that kind of folks told us in the beginning that they were really looking for from news and information. And then the last slide that I had to share with you all today also talked about that multi-format, because this was another kind of key hallmark of what we're trying to do here, which is really go to where people are and share the information in ways that make sense for them. So we have done comic book news, like comic panel news and information. We've done video explainers about how things work. We do a lot of audio every week, and we'll do audio where we'll also pull the written transcript as well. And that's so folks can follow along with the written word as they're listening. And then we do a lot of one-page explainers on kind of how things work. Most recently, we did something on the city's senior lawn cutting program. How does that work? How do people sign up for it? We've done reporting on the city's paint program, right? That isn't getting a lot of folks actually through the process. How does that work? What are the places where folks are getting stuck? And then we do a lot of social media reporting. The key for that really being, we want folks, as they're scrolling through their Instagram feed, to be able to pick up the key components of basic local news that's happening. So those were kind of the slides I was going to walk folks through today to talk a little bit about what we're doing and how it's different than traditional media. And now I think we can take some questions and have conversation.
Lila, thank you. And apologies to everyone about the slides. The link is in the chat, so please do feel free to click into those. So Lila, as you look back at this past year and all that has gotten started and accomplished, what are some of those successes that you can look to after the launch of Signal Cleveland here?
So, we've really elevated this idea that you don't have to be a full-time working journalist to be able to practice journalism. And so I love seeing that we're sending people out every week to all of these public meetings, and we're able to elevate the work that they're doing. It's the number one thing when we started training people that they were hoping would happen is that their notes kind of wouldn't go and be posted on the internet and no one would interact with them. So we do a weekly newsletter that goes out to almost 10,000 folks in the greater Cleveland area that highlights the news that's happening in local government that really people are interacting with and getting kind of the local basic news and information they need. And then being able to take that information and turn it into audio pieces and social media pieces has also been a huge win for us, because it's our way of saying, yeah, you actually can trust residents and folks who aren't working journalists to get that news and become part of the news gathering process.
And then let's look on the flip side of that. Launching something new can obviously come with challenges. So what are some of those challenges that you have run into, and how have you worked to move through those?
So starting anything from scratch is a huge, huge challenge. And we are really trying to flip a news model that has been in existence for a very, very long time. And that means that there are many things that those of us who have worked as journalists are probably used to doing that we kind of have to interrogate. Is this the way we really want to be doing this? It also means we have to create a process for everything that we're doing. So anytime you have to create a process from scratch, that's a huge, huge lift. And it's a challenge. And I think that's kind of one of the hallmarks of the challenge that we're facing now. I think we talk a lot about, weaving community and news together. And we have two teams within the Cleveland newsroom that are focused on that work. And how those teams interface and what's the priority for each team at any given time is something that we work through every day, because you may have a story that's breaking and you're wanting to get input on it and you're wanting to move quickly, and you also have to weigh the idea that you want to get more voice and more perspective on the story at the same time. So those are things that we're wrestling with every day.
Signal Cleveland launched with some great support from foundations. What is that kind of ongoing funding model to help sustain the organization?
So right now we are somewhat almost 100% supported by philanthropy, which we have such huge support. We need that support in order to build out this model, because what we're doing in some cases is so new and has never been done before that if you didn't have that runway of philanthropic support, you would never be able to get there. But the revenue model over time is almost like you take that pie and break it into thirds. So philanthropy will always be a part of that picture. We'll also build out support from residents. We're proud to have, I think we're almost 600 folks from the greater Cleveland area who have sent us donations, and those donations might range from $5 to $5,000 to support the work. That shows us that what we're doing is valuable for people here. And then a third of that will be corporate support or advertising. And we have taken only very little advertising so far as we build out the process for how we'll be able to do that. But over time, we're working fairly quickly to get to kind of cutting that pie in thirds. So corporate and advertising, smaller dollar donations from greater Clevelanders, and then philanthropic support.
So as you look to continue to build your work, who are some of the key partners and what additional partnerships are you looking to build?
So right now we have partnerships with WKYC Television, which we see as really important because video and audio is an area we really want to grow in. We have a local community partnership with the Buckeye Flame, which is a statewide LGBTQ plus publication. We do co-publishing with the Cleveland Observer, which is a hyper-local community paper in Cleveland. And Cleveland has a really robust community media ecosystem. And those organizations really are reaching deeply into neighborhoods. So we value those partnerships as well. We also work really closely with the Marshall Project Cleveland, which also came to town about the same time that Signal started getting our legs on the ground last year to do reporting on criminal justice. So partnerships are really key because they're going to help us reach folks we wouldn't be able to reach. And our effort right now is really around growing audience. So all of the good work that folks are doing, all of the hundreds of greater Clevelanders who are involved in news gathering through Signal Cleveland, it doesn't mean a whole lot if folks don't read or we don't grow that audience and let folks know that we're here. So that's kind of a hallmark of where we're focused right now, and the partnerships are a key part of that.
So as you think about the stories that have gone out, what kind of difference are the stories making? What's been the impact of the reporting thus far?
So we did one series on lead that really, kind of one of the heart of the things that we want to interrogate through our news gathering is how our process is working for Clevelanders. And so we looked at this family that was really struggling with the city's 2009 lead safe law, and really looked at where was it not working for them. So the law is meant to provide lead safe housing. And in this family's case, they were really losing housing, and then the landlord wasn't being held accountable for making the housing lead safe. And as a result, they were facing homelessness. And those are the type of things that after that series ran, the city reorganized how they were doing that work, placed someone in building and housing to really look more deeply at how that was impacting and working for people. So those are the kind of things that we want to be able to do more of. Same with a paint story we did around the city's paint program. Why are people not accessing the program? And what we found is that many of the folks who were applying weren't actually making it through. And then the folks who weren't making it through were ending up with free paint, but no process to actually get their homes painted. After that, then the city the next year revised their process to provide additional dollars to actually hire contractors to actually paint the homes, because we know Cleveland homes are fairly big and hard for one homeowner to paint themselves. So those are the kind of things we're really looking at, making systems and processes, local government processes, work better for Clevelanders.
Can you walk us through the process of, you've got the reporter out in the community gathering the information, and then that comes back in. How does that then translate to the publication that you put out?
It's a great question. It's this part of Rick's question about how are you ensuring accuracy? When we started training Greater Clevelanders to be part of this news gathering process, we would have 4 editors on every set of notes that they turned in, really saying that we value accuracy to such a degree that we are going to edit these more than I'm sure any reporter in the area was being edited. So that means that maybe looking back and looking at the video of a meeting. We do meeting transcriptions in some cases. So sometimes our editors are scrolling through those transcriptions just to verify a fact. What we found is that when we're training people on how to go about doing this, we're also saying, yes, accuracy counts, but don't be afraid to make a mistake. And this is about learning and developing this skill. And so what we found is that we have not had as much of an issue with accuracy as I think we had been concerned with in the beginning. Right now, we have 2 sets of editors' eyes on every piece of content that comes from a note taker. And we have one fantastic copy editor who's probably had their eyes on every set of notes that's ever come through there. So we value the accuracy, and if we make a mistake, we make a correction on that. And we tell folks when we're training them, don't be afraid to make a mistake. And it's okay to say. It's also okay to say in their notes, I don't know. This was a conversation and I don't really understand the background or the context of that conversation, because that's going to let us know that, is going to prompt our reporters to say, oh, let's look into this. Let's explain this.
What's been the most interesting pitch or idea that you've received from soliciting ideas from your readers?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question before. Most interesting idea. Right now we're trying to do something with police discipline records. There was a conversation, there are lots of conversations folks are having around safety and what does safety really mean? And what are people most concerned about when it comes to safety? So we have had a bunch of folks who have been, we requested a bunch of police discipline records, and we've had a small team of about 5 folks kind of parsing those out and looking at those and trying to figure out what are the safety issues, or what are the issues police are most disciplined for. It turns out it's sick leave abuse. So that was helpful because the questions were really around police safety and interfacing with the police. I'll have to think about that question though. Really good question.
Lila, as you look ahead, what's the vision for the next few years for Signal Cleveland?
For Signal Cleveland is to continue to improve our process for surfacing the questions that folks have and being able to act and make our reporting responsive to those questions. But remember, we're just one newsroom in a statewide network that's growing. So as that network grows, Akron will come online, and the vision for that is to spread out across the state. So I would love to say that in a few years, I have counterparts in Akron, which we know will happen, but in other areas of the state, and we're getting local news and information from communities that don't have that as a resource now.
So, question more about your journey. So you've had an interesting career starting in journalism through the community building work. Can you tell us a little bit more about those experiences and how they've gotten to where you are today?
I grew up on the East Side. I'm first generation college student. And for me, having the opportunity to go to college, I really wanted to have the opportunity to make brave choices, to follow my own curiosity. And I've been really lucky to be able to do that. And this work in particular is kind of a combination of those two worlds. So I spent 10 years really immersed in trying to start new ways of connecting with the community in Cleveland and trying out and experimenting. That led, and at the same time also working to share information in the community, really as an effort to combat social isolation. And so I think the through line through all of that work is a real interest and respect for the stories that people have to tell as Clevelanders, and trying to figure out, how do we engage with folks to tell more of those stories, and how do we engage with folks in a way that is respectful and that gets all of us more comfortable sharing our stories and our information, and sharing what we don't know, and asking those questions. So a true interest in the stories and the information and perspectives that people bring.
And for those of us on the call today, what can we do to support your work?
Oh, please subscribe. Please tell people we are here. Check out signalcleveland.org. We have a newsletter button. Subscribe to those newsletters. Every week I send out a newsletter that just says, hit reply and tell me what you're thinking. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know when we hit the mark. Let us know when we don't. But please share the news that Signal Cleveland is here, and ask people to check out our website and subscribe to our newsletters.
And we will be sure to share that link in the follow-up email for everyone today. Encourage everyone to check out Signal Cleveland and share ideas and support the work of Lila and her team. Lila, thank you so much for sharing your passion for this work. We are very excited to see all that's to come from you and your reporters.
Thank you, Rachel.